Good afternoon, Dr. Martin. Uh, Here's my presentation for this assignment. And as you can see, the title of my research here, what I'm trying to do through my EDD program is to do an explorative, qualitative case study that will help me to explore how do math teacher approach to sustain the language and the culture of indigenous, multilingual, Black Caribbean, and African immigrant students. That's my research problem and basically my research question. And I'll start with my theoretical framework for the study. Through the study, my theoretical framework, I'm going to touch about five theoretical framework, but my main focus will be right here cultural system, mathematics, pedagogy. So that's where I'm going to spend more time. So I have five theoretical framework, and the history of what I'm using as theoretical framework start with cultural relevant pedagogy with Ladson, Gloria Ladson Billing. Then I have cultural responsive teaching that was introduced by Geneva Gay. Geneva Gay to the she built her, the cultural response pedagogy from cultural relevant pedagogy. Then we have cultural responsive mathematics from Algera. He basically took the work of Geneva Gay and applied it in the field of mathematics. Uh, uh, people in the field of mathematics can have their instruction or support more diverse group of students, especially those from the minority like Black African American students, immigrants from Africa and from the Caribbean. Then we have ethnomathematics, which basically build on what Aguirre from the framework of Aguirre, but ethnomathematics is more globally uh, hard to include the ethnic, the culture, and the language, basically the ethnic of diverse group in the field of mathematics to promote their the wealth of their culture, the wealth of the basically their cultural heritage. Then cultural sustain pedagogic is basically how to sustain those culture and those heritages that immigrant Caribbean they bring in the school with them because when they immigrate they bringing with them their culture and their values. And what I'm trying to do is to see how my teacher uh, sustain those values because those values they bring with them from Africa, from the Caribbean. It capture what I say their epistemological realities because it express more who they are. So I'm going to spend more time talk about that here. Now, uh, I'm going to from my research, from my sub question for the study, I have five of them. And the first one, I'm here now. So to conclude with theoretical framework is basically going to go from the history of cultural system mathematic pedagogy. It start with CRP, that's Billing, CRT, Jennifer Gay, CMT, Aguirre, ethnomathematics, that was from the Brazilian uh, uh, or Ombozino. Ethnomathematics was introduced, but first time in 91 by a mathematician Brazilian, Dambozino. A cultural system pedagogy was introduced by was entered by Paris Django. So in mathematics, I'm trying to bring it in the thing in the field of mathematics. Now, my research question, I have five of them. The first one is, how do math teachers perceive the impact of linguicism in their classes? Linguicism is basically uh, discrimination based on the accent of the language that people speak. So people coming from Africa, they speak their dialect. From Jamaica, they speak Creole. When they come here, the system of education doesn't capture that. We also have some indigenous from Hawaii, Arizona, and some in Australia, some in New Zealand, some in Canada. Basically, all those group of students, we have some of them in our school here in America, and their epistemological reality is not captured. And through the study, I'm not going to take all their epistemological reality in my study. I'm just going to focus how can my teacher use proverb and artifacts from indigenous and black multilingual black immigrant from Africa and from the Caribbean. My second sub question is, how do my teacher describe their experiences with teaching indigenous and MBK mean multi-bilingual Caribbean African immigrant? So student. Third sub question, what instructional strategy are helpful for math teacher with indigenous and MBK student? And my fourth sub question, what obstacle do math teacher encounter when they implement their strategies? And the last uh, sub question is, how do math teacher feel prepared to work with indigenous and MBK students? So basically, those five sub questions help to support and to answer the research question, which is, how do math teacher approach sustain the language and the culture of indigenous, multi-black Caribbean and immigrant students. So for the study, the research design is laid out on here. I start with to define the research problem. The problem is to sustain the language and the culture of indigenous and MBK students because their uh, epistemological reality is not captured in the education here in America, even globally. It's not really captured. Most of the thing is central around Eurocentric education that flow from the period of enlightenment. So everything is designed around Eurocentric. Basically, the indigenous way of thinking is kind of like neglected. That's the problem. How can we frame it to support those group of students? My second point for the research design is literature review. And then third point, collect data. Fourth point, data analysis. Then from the data analysis, sometimes three and four is three, four usually is framed around the methodology. That's so it's gonna be methodology. Then five is gonna draw. I'm gonna draw some themes. So themes coming from the observations, interviews, documentation, what themes emerge during my in vivo um coding, uh, all these things. When I do the in vivo, what kind of theme emerge? That's what I will be. I'm gonna talk about it when I'm talking because I'm doing the color coding and then in vivo coding for theme. So name discussion at 6 point. Now for data analysis, data collection analysis, uh, I'm gonna do for two schools. School A is gonna be Glaston High School, which is dominated by immigrant from Africa, and school B is gonna be Stormont High School, which is dominated with immigrant from the Caribbean, like Jamaica, Guyana, and so on. And that's going to be phase one. So on my phase one for the data collection, on the, for the study, phase one is classroom observation. So I start with classroom observation because I don't want the teacher to know exactly what I'm trying to look for. So that's why I didn't start with interview. So I start with observation. I just want to see first observe so they don't know exactly what I'm looking for. I will observe all the participants school A and school B. Phase two, I'm going to collect document from the participants such as lesson plan, instructional and instructional, even from the county. I mean, just collect things from them. At this point of phase two, they don't know exactly what I'm doing. Now, phase three, uh, I will do another interview. So interview come at phase three because uh, mm, eh, some question that you can ask them in phase three, some question if I would have if I put interview on phase one, some they might have a clue of what I'm looking for, and then doing class observation, they will have already been prepared. So I put interview phase three because of that. So when I do the interview, I already observe their class and everything, so on. Now phase four is where I'm going to do coding. I'm doing in vivo uh, coding, um, color coding, and then in vivo coding teams. Then I also have member checkings to strengthen uh, uh, the trustworthiness and the validity of what I'm doing. That's why I do member checking to make sure that everything that the result of what I have for my study is exactly what my participant was trying to convey. So the limitation of this study could be that I don't have the participant, which is going to be the student that those indigenous and multiple and multilingual Black Caribbean immigrant students, they are absent in the study. And this kind of study is sometimes very important for them to have their voice, but because of the time frame, their voice is not included. I first want to go with their teacher, maybe for future study. I'm going to include their voice, maybe include the voice of their parent, so it's not that they are left around. Their voice will come in for future study. The voice of their parent is just the beginning of something that is going to go in development. So, as you see, my data collection process is phase one here, observation, phase two, documentation, phase three, interview and member checking, and that is basically what I'm doing overall. To this style of data collection is useful because it helps to strengthen the concept of triangulation. Triangulation requires that you have multiple sources of collection from your data. That's why you see I have interview, observation, document, interview, member checking. So to make my triangulation robust, according to Goba and Lincoln, they want us to have multiple sources of collection of data to make sure that our study is very reliable, things like that. I was also thinking about to do the concept of crystallization, which we study during this semester, but I still try to figure out how to include that in my study. I had to make it had to crystallize it so the flow uh, can be very well from all the chapter. So the flow and the connection can uh, can be well oriented. So that's a it's a new concept, crystallization. Hopefully, before I defend my prospectus, I will have some idea of how to include the crystallization concept on my prospectus and defense. So, in conclusion, what I'm doing is how to capture, how to support uh, and promote, how to support teachers in multilingual um, and multicultural schools where they have indigenous, multilingual Black, Caribbean, and African immigrant. How to support them. That's the aim of what I'm doing. How to support those teachers to work with those math teachers to work with those group of students, because the number of immigrants in America is keep growing. The projections say that by 2060, the number of immigrants will increase by 4%. So we have to be ready, and to be ready means have an institutional practice or style that capture their epistemological reality. So including things like proverbs, because their culture and their heritage is well framed around proverb, artifacts, how to frame artifact in mathematics. So that's basically all that I will be doing to solve the problem of this research study. And I'll be turning around mostly around ethnomathematics and cultural sustain pedagogy, and no mathematics from De Rosa, D'Ambrosino, and cultural system pedagogy from uh, Paris Django, and then so I have also some authors from who capture the indigenous concept of teaching, like D, and I also have some like Fahimi from Nigeria, who had to include the Yoruba culture in in mathematics. I have Furuto in Hawaii, University of Hawaii, had to include mathematics in the culture of indigenous in uh, in mathematics. I also have a Hunter from New Zealand, University of New Zealand, had to bring those from native Pacifican indigenous uh, culture in mathematics. I have um, what's his name? Ali had to, and Yemi from Nigeria, and Ali from Nigeria had to bring the Yoruba, no, uh, the concept of how can I say, the concept of logic, how to express logic in Yoruba mathematics. All is in my daily memo. You can see how to bring all those in. Caribbean side, I have other uh, like Nero, uh, Glenda Nero had to bring Creole into the field of mathematics. I also have people uh, uh, like what's her name again? I have Neo. We have to bring the concept of mathematics from Neo. We have from the Creole side. We have Johnson and Jonel. Yeah, we have on the Creole side. We have Johnson and Jonel. That's from New York, New York Public Systems. She did some research how to include Creole in mathematics in New York Public School. Johnson, and then we have most of them. So basically, that's what I have for this video, and we have Howell, Kiramba, yeah, Olo, Siegel for the Creole. So that's basically all that I have, and I hope it capture. When you read the paper that go with this PowerPoint, you will see all these names that support my literature review. And I do it because there's a lack of support in that area. That's why that's what motivated. As an indigenous from Africa, I feel like something need to be done, because I see people just like me uh, going through the same process, where their education is not, where their epistemological reality is not represented, their culture is not represented very well, and when it is represented to just scare and intimidate the people, but they have rich culture. That's all I'm trying to defend through this uh, process. I hope I capture everything. Have a nice. It was very good to have your classroom because it helped me to go through all the process of the design for this study, how to prepare from theoretical framework, so, also research question, sub question, methodology, and data collection and analysis, how to do the in vivo color coding and member checking, all these things, how to also frame um, so many considerations I gained from your classroom. And thanks again for teaching us this summer. And have a wonderful summer, end of summer. Thank you. Bye.